I'm the crazy one. Perhaps I'm the crazy one.
Darkiplier as a concept was originally created by fans, not Mark. Darkiplier's history shows us a contrast between two forces of nature. Not some hero and foil villain, but between Markiplier and his fans. This unique dynamic is part of why Darkiplier has remained a huge influence and inspiration in Markiplier's fandom, despite the sparse and spontaneous nature of its appearances. But how exactly did we get here? To get a good look at our spooky boy this spooky season, we'll be looking at this in 4 parts. The evil YouTuber fandom trends of the early 2010s, Mark's reaction and making his own Darkiplier, the impact of Who Killed Markiplier, and the Darkiplier cycle. Before we begin... Okay, algorithm gods, I did the thing. Are you happy? Are you satisfied? It's hard not to feel old when I remember first making my Tumblr account in 2012. At the time, it was like a haven for fandoms that I'd never found anywhere else. While I saw Mark's content early on, I didn't get too involved in the Markiplier fandom on Tumblr, at least not until I was out of my Super Hulock phase. You heard it here first, folks. I've always been this cringe. Some of you might recall these 2 personas being the 2 most popular among YouTuber fandoms, long before people started calling them egos. However, early on, circa 2012-2014, almost every fandom around a YouTuber ended up with a concept for an evil, fictionalized version of the YouTuber. These fictional characters were usually named using a pun of the YouTuber's name, with a word that was at least evil adjacent. Hence Darkiplier and Anti-Septiceye. Inventing an alternate evil twin of a character, either in fanfic, fan art, or the media itself, is an idea that's fairly common. I think there's something very human in considering what an evil version of someone would be like. But applying it to real people, let alone YouTubers, felt very new and exciting in the early 2010s. I recall these characters being referred to as antis, as in the antithesis of the YouTuber in question. But, antis also refers to a completely different group in fandom, so good luck trying to look up anything using anti. Initially, evil YouTubers weren't even acknowledged by the YouTubers in question. While it was a trend applied to many people, the fandoms often got their inspiration for applying said trend from something about the YouTuber. The reason Darkiplier might have had such a strong presence in this trend might come from how early on Mark was able to provide inspiration, as well as how he went about it. The video Don't Blink is a video Mark posted on his channel in June of 2012, which is around the time this trend got circulating. This video is often referred to as the birth of Darkiplier. Since most of his playthroughs on his channel at the time were of horror games, videos like Don't Blink and Don't Move were his experiments for expanding in the horror genre. He'd also have some of this creepiness leak into his commentary and gameplay in his playthroughs, something he's done as recently as this year. One very popular video from 2013 was Raspy Hill.
Hello everybody, my name is Markiplier and welcome to Let's Play Raspy Hill. I got a lot of emails that said that I needed to play this because there were mannequins in this, and if you know me, you know that I do not like mannequins. What is that sound? Oh. Okay, alright, oh hello. Oh hi, okay, alright, I get it. Holy crap! Hang on, I gotta, wow! They're falling from the friggin' sky! Oh my god! Get away, get away, get away, get away! Oh god, get away, get away!
I don't quite feel like myself. I've been having strange dreams lately.
Having these random moments of horror come up out of nowhere like this, when viewers were just expecting a normal horror game, led to a fairly consistent storyline in early interpretations of Darkiplier, that he was some type of demonic spirit, trying to take over Mark's body to make him do nefarious things, as well as to take over the channel. There are plenty of variations within this, from Dark's true appearance to what he was capable of, but the trend within the trend held fast for the majority. Raspy Hill was released a little over a year after Don't Blink, and it was this video that drew me, personally, into this side of the fandom. Darkiplier having a theme of wanting to trick the viewer into thinking he was still Markiplier was one of my favorite tropes within this.
And I'll make you feel right at home. Welcome to Raspy Hill.
Once I got invested, I started looking for fan fiction and fan art. as I often do in a fandom space. There were some fanfics that were interesting, showing a struggle between Darkiplier and Markiplier, but the vast majority of fanfics were... anything from like a enemies to lovers romance between Darkiplier and a viewer, to straight up BDSM scenes. Which is fine, like, that comes up a lot in all fandoms. I'm not here to kink shame. People exploring their interest in fiction is actually very normal, and can even be a healthy way of expressing yourself. Personally, however, the most romantic I could picture Darkiplier was like Jareth the Goblin King, where his propensity to command and control naturally makes him the antagonist, and incompatible with his obsession, Sarah. But of course he's played by David Bowie, so he's romanticized a lot too. Parallels, am I right? There's always ways to take romanticization and sexualization a bit too far, especially when it comes to real people, but from what I can tell, the majority of this stuff in Darkiplier fandom is relatively harmless.
You do you, and I'll do me, and we won't do each other. Probably.
In my opinion, Darkiplier's roots reflect the desires and interests of Mark's fandom, channeled through the content that Mark provided. Mark eventually made this post on Tumblr in 2013, refusing to take credit and reinforcing that the concept wasn't canon to his experiments in the horror genre. But eventually, Mark would choose to do something that would change this forever. By the end of 2012, Markiplier had over 50,000 subscribers, and the Darkiplier fandom was a niche within a niche, living mainly in the fans' hearts. But as the years went by, despite the little creepy bits Mark was giving the fandom, fans began to accept that Mark would never take the concept seriously, especially after a remark he made in 2014.
Turn into emo vampire Darkiplier here.
That's my Darkiplier. If everyone can make their own Darkiplier, mine's the emo vampire.
No one understands me and my art. I'm just gonna listen to my music and make my poetry.
From there, it felt like Mark largely held disdain for the Darkiplier concept, and that even with Mark's interest in storytelling, Darkiplier would remain a faning character, and never confirmed to be a real character. By the time we were in 2017, he had over 16 million subscribers. And while the Darkiplier fandom wasn't as big as it used to be, there were still fans referring to the bits Mark did as a Darkiplier moment. Then, it was February of 2017, Valentine's Day to be specific. Markiplier released his very first interactive YouTube web series, A Date with Markiplier. When the series first launched, my younger brother and I played it together. We both were aware of Darkiplier as a concept, as well as the appearance of Mark's feelings on the matter. Eventually, we tried the pay-for-dinner route for the first time, and on our next choice, we saw the two movie options, Love Too Soon and... Both of us instantly knew what that meant. I was worried about clicking on it, since my brother is a lot younger than I am, but he immediately started yelling, "Click it, just click it, what do you see right now? This is so cool, ah!" And so the both of us were introduced to the first iteration of Markiplier's Darkiplier. And I'm not gonna lie, my David Bowie villain-loving ass was very, very happy. But his introduction of Darkiplier showed that he had learned a lot about making something really creepy and really cool.
Now that we are here together, we can really get to know each other.
The reaction online was immediate, and much like our own. No one was expecting Mark to be as passionate about the character concept as we were, and his take on Darkiplier was very refreshing, deviating from the norms of the trend in ways that really made the concept more fleshed out.
Long ago, a long time ago, I like to do these scary edits because I just felt like doing scary edits. And this is how Darkiplier got born. Over time, Darkiplier became less and less about the scary figure and more about this romantic figure. And it always rubbed me the wrong way. And I kind of shied away from Darkiplier for a while. But when I wanted to do it, I wanted to do it my way. And I wanted to do it right. I spent like 8 hours editing this. Getting that voice right was so paramount to what I wanted to come out of this.
This was supposed to all be the same video.
Yeah, but YouTube annotations, this new version doesn't allow you to link the same video multiple times. So these are literally the old videos that I first did when Darkiplier first came about. Everyone had their own version of Darkiplier, and I thought it was hilarious that, hey, here's my version of Darkiplier. He's an idiot. Like, if he's just this weird emo kid. And then I stepped back from that. Darkiplier was not a thing when I was making those videos. I just wanted to make some creepy stuff. And then I thought about that and I was like, I need to put something out there that is not ambiguous. In my mind, Darkiplier is an entirely different person from me. But, much like Warfstash, doesn't obey the laws of physics. He exists like in another world entirely and bleeds through into this one. So, this is sounding really nerdy of me, but I just... Okay.
No, I love it.
Okay.
I remember the work stuff
Okay.
talk about how
So, he's a social manipulator. He is literally 100% manipulative. He leads you into this false sense of security, and he wants you to trust him because he wants to take advantage of you. That is literally what I wanted for Darkiplier, and how creepy and scary that actually is.
If dinner is what you want, well, I can provide.
Like in this, and I wanted this to come across in a seductive way, while also masking this like burning rage inside that breaks through the suave nature of it. That was my clue to reveal he's not your friend. He's not here to help you. He's here to use you.
I can give you anything!
Wait. Look, Sarah. Look what I'm offering you. Your dreams.
In July, he released Darkiplier vs. Antisepticeye, which not only included Jacksepticeye's evil persona, but the personas of other YouTubers as well, which may have been a reference to the evil YouTuber trend as a whole.
Big beat motherfucker, it's Tom Scott!
Even though there wasn't a film's length of content for Mark's iteration of Darkiplier, what little he offered was eaten up and appreciated so strongly. And then, we got the real lore. The story that would define Darkiplier in ways that the fandom, and maybe even Mark, could never have anticipated. I've already discussed in depth the struggles Markiplier had in conveying concepts and dropping hints for the Who Killed Markiplier storyline, as well as the difficulty of parsing his Word of God explanation videos. I've come to terms with the fact that no one has a full understanding of every minute detail of the lore, and that's okay. Even so, there are some immutable facts in canon, and ideas that are widely accepted. Who Killed Markiplier is a prequel story that gives us context for how Warfstash and Darkiplier came to be as they are. The story is told in first person, starting out as a supernatural mystery and ending as a tragedy, leaving Warfstash alone in madness, while Darkiplier uses and abandons us, the viewer character. Even with the details being muddy, amongst the confusion was a strong emotional tone at the end of the series, which was jarring compared to the wacky goofiness at the start. The recontextualization of two beloved characters we'd seen grow since 2012 really impacted the Darkiplier niche of the Markiplier fandom. In this story, we learn that Darkiplier is a construct of 4 parts. One part Damien, who was once close friends with actor Mark. One part his twin sister Celine, who was once actor Mark's wife. One part the viewer's body, which they are convinced to steal from us. And one part... well, we'll get into that in a second. Damien was initially full of empathy, often trying to help everyone get along, and assuming the best in his closest friends, while Celine had the more self-protective, manipulative side, as well as some level of occult magic. They escape the fate of being trapped in a darker plane of existence when Actor Mark tries to get revenge on them, and thus begin their own quest for revenge on Actor Mark. Some of this was established right away in Who Killed Markiplier, while a sequel to this, Damien, helped clarify and canonize details that were missed.
As far as timeline goes, I imagined when I first wanted this to happen, in that one moment where the hand in Who Killed Markiplier reaches out for the cane, I imagined if in that moment time froze and all of the events of Damien happened in that one moment, like just that one moment hanging in time. That's when it all happened. Damien just wants to be able to make a choice. Like, he has had no say in anything. His original like saying, his motto, his part from Who Killed Markiplier of the 3 characters in there was, "Life is ours to choose," as I always say. And he has not had a choice this entire time. Like, I couldn't leave it with an ending that didn't give him a choice.
This new backstory gives the character motivation, and emphasizes choice as a core theme for the character. It makes Darkiplier less of an evil persona and more of a gray area character with antagonistic tendencies. This seems to come across clear enough to the fandom, but there is a brand new character introduced in Who Killed Markiplier? It's difficult to fully understand this without support from Word of God. No, I'm not talking about the DA or your name. It's Markiplier Manor.
I've never been very comfortable in this house.
went in a weird bubble world, and you appeared on the other side, and you didn't really question it.
But where's this room been the entire time?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's got glass
Where's this
doors.
room?
You think
You would have seen
it at
this
some
room.
point.
We've walked by this room
The
tons.
house didn't want you to see it yet. There you go. Nailed it.
Yes!
You
Good! Very good. Is this why the longer you stay in the house, the worse things get? People are wondering about this. It's not fair, is it?
It's a creepy line because it's almost like something that someone would say to empathize with somebody else.
Yeah.
Not like the victim of a horrific murder.
Yeah. So I will say that is not Mark saying that line. That is someone saying that line through Mark's body.
Markiplier wanted to show that the house was maybe not a character in the typical sense, but like a force of nature, operating on its own rules and manipulating its inhabitants. It played a key role in Darkiplier's creation, and is the fourth part of Darkiplier themselves. But despite its relevance to Darkiplier, what the manor exactly is and what it can do are among the vaguest of details in the lore. Markiplier hasn't given this concept a name beyond the house, but the fandom has dubbed it the entity. And yet, the house seems to also be an antonym for another concept, maybe?
Mark was left in like this super spiral downwards. He was just completely out of it, didn't know what to do, and he may have at one point tried to kill himself. But it didn't work, which was super weird. One of the interesting things about Warhammer 40k is this concept of chaos. There's this almost parallel universe that is, I'm not saying that's what this is, but the concept. It's filled with human emotions. No matter what they are, positive or negative, it's filled with that. And eventually, over time, these intelligences start forming in the chaos of this other universe. And this chaos, the worst thing about it, and the one thing that I took from this is, the thing that causes people to change and the thing that curses people is this, it's this not a thing, but it's this idea that whispers in your ear. And the worst thing that could possibly do is it makes you think that the ends justify the means in whatever situation that you're taking. It's not like one thing, it's gently over time, like this thing whispering, like, imagine after, like, Mark, his wife left him, his friend betrayed him, like, this thing whispers like, that's not fair, that's not fair. No, that's not fair. No, you're right. No, that's not fair. Why should they be happy? No, of course. No, they shouldn't be happy. Maybe, you know, maybe they shouldn't be happy. Maybe they don't deserve to be happy. Maybe you should do something about them not being happy. Maybe you should set something up to make sure that they'll never be happy again. And it's just this day-by-day step of, like, the longer you stay in that house, the more it drives you towards things like that it wants you to do. And the worst part is it convinces you that you thought of it in the first place. That's what the house does.
But from this bit in Word of God, it feels to me like the house could be referring to two different concepts.
In this universe, the world that they live in after the events of Who Killed Markiplier are that they are in stories. They are acting out, you know, scripts. The truth of it is, the house is just an analogy for my head. Like, this is just my imagination. And all these characters in it are characters that I've written. It's like the actor wanted Damien to be the villain. He wants people to slot into these roles in the story and act them out and be these characters. And with Celine and Damien, they live in this place because Celine made a little pocket story of her own.
Oh, and you are going to make the perfect villain in my story. He did say he wanted me to be the villain. Maybe he should be more careful with his wishes.
After confirming this meta-story element from Markiplier lore, Heist was released, which included another cameo of Darkiplier that explored this further. In this cameo, Darkiplier shows us that he has meta-knowledge after his experiences in Damien, and is aware of the truth that he is in a story invented by actor.
Perhaps I'm the crazy one. Perhaps you've done it 100 times already. Over and over and over again. Maybe you just missed my pretty face. Do you really want to know what's inside this box? The truth, not the lies he's told you.
Now, with all of this in mind, This is my way of trying to make sense of all of these details. It goes like this. How Edaha understand lore. This Markiplier's brain. This house. This upside down. This Darkiplier. Entity in Mark's brain. In fact, entity everywhere. All of the characters exist in the brain. Oh, what? Patrick? What's wrong? You want dinner? Hang on. Sometimes characters in house, but sometimes character in other places. But it's still house. It just look different. Nobody really leaves the house. Entity influenced house and things in house. Actor Mark learned how to mess with house to make it the stage for story time. Actor needs a villain and makes Darkiplier the villain. Darkiplier know he just in story. Darkiplier know you know he just in story. We see he is in story because we see through the screen like mirror. We see because Markiplier put contents of his brain on the channel. Ta-da! So at some point, I got the idea that the entity residing in Darkiplier wasn't the entire entity as a whole, more like a sliver of what could fit between Celine and Damien. Anyway, at some point, not sure when, I assumed all of what I just described was canon, because it was the only way I could make sense of all the things, right? And then I started doing this thing that I'm usually not good at. I talked to other people. Every single time I'd nerd out to someone about Darkiplier or the entity, I found out that this someone had a completely different idea of what the entity is, and then when I found another new person, they have a completely different idea of what us two had, and so on and so forth. And not only will we all have slightly different takes, but we will all assume everyone else has the same take as we do, until we're nerding out and realize we all sound like we're speaking alien languages at each other.
If it's not in the story right here, then everything else like could be anything. What exists is what's on the screen. I'm not very much about like the tangentially related inferences as far as like story goes. The story is what it is, even if it betrays what I originally wanted. What's on the screen is what it is.
I also saw people talk about why he wears bow ties now because of Damien, and I'm like, oh no.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Oh no. See, that's the other thing. Like there's so many cool things that the fans make up. That's why I'm very much like, if it's not in the video, then like if I didn't specifically put it in and specifically frame it a certain way, like it's like a lot of things are open-ended.
Before 2017, Darkiplier had a handful of certain traits, maybe. Mark's interpretation of Darkiplier was very contrary to the common traits and themes associated with him through fandom, even challenging the ideas at times. Mark's Darkiplier has had a massive impact on how we view and interpret Darkiplier. Like, look at the difference. He's always in a suit now. All suits and nothing else. You telling me this configuration of being can't wear normal clothes? There is still some variety, though. I've seen fandom go wild with their imagination still, and everything from what pronouns Darkiplier uses, to how often they are in Celine mode, what they want with the viewer, what they're capable of, etc. And of course, lots of romanticization and sexualization as always. And frankly, many parts of the fandom are still hungry for more. In Space with Markiplier had very little to do with Darkiplier at all, just a vine's length shot of his foot. We don't even see his face. And when I tell you that some fans got mad, I'm not going to call out anyone specifically, but when I tell you that people were angry or sad or let down, well, to be fair, a lot of that was on Twitter, but look, I could go on and on about how Mark doesn't owe us anything. And I do want to bring up this speculation that others have, that he's become uncomfortable with portraying the character because of all the sexualization, especially now that it's being applied to a character he earnestly created himself. But I also want to look at this from a different angle. Mark's interpretation of Darkiplier has impacted how people view this character. A character that wasn't his to begin with. And anything else that he does with Darkiplier, big or small, has the potential to do more of the same. Like, I don't even think I saw him in a white suit until Heist came out, and for weeks after that, everyone was drawing him in that white suit. On the one hand, it's cool to see that, but from a writer's perspective, having that kind of influence can also be vastly intimidating. It could be that he wants to build his skills as a writer and creator with different concepts, so that he can tackle the themes he wants to with Darkiplier in a more meaningful way, and portray his character and concepts in a way that's easier to understand. Or it could be that he just wants to move on, that he wants to make content and characters that don't have the fans' desires projected onto it at an intrinsic level. Or it could be a combination of both, or a combination of all of the above, or different reasons entirely. We don't know what we don't know, after all. But I do know that Darkiplier has grown in a very cyclical way, bouncing back and forth from us to Mark to us again. Right now, the ball is in his court to continue the cycle. If I were in his shoes, and I had the struggles he had with Who Killed Markiplier, I'd make sure I was going to throw that ball in the right direction before I did it. Besides, Darkiplier is in a pretty decent spot right now. He's not too narrow or too wide, too vague or too strict in our interpretations. Maybe we should just let him vibe for a minute. Darkiplier vs. Antiseptic Guy currently has 16 million views. The very name we use to refer to him outside of canon, Darkiplier, was quite probably conceived by a handful of fans on Tumblr and spread out and around until it stuck. When I first saw the name in 2012, I thought it wouldn't get any more notoriety than the Boxes meme. Does anyone even remember that one anymore? I can't find it anywhere. I'm not talking about Tiny Box Tim, I mean the one that's like, Boxes! Yet Mark and the fandom have brought this concept all the way into 2022, a full decade since it was first conceived. In Mark's Tumblr post in 2013, well, I could be reading too much into this. This might be a reach, but something about the way he expresses his awe at the concept of Darkiplier has this level of helplessness to it, you know? Despite whatever could happen in the wildly meta lore, when it comes to real life, Mark literally cannot escape Darkiplier. Fans still make art and fiction and theories to this day. So in conclusion, Darkiplier is the paradox that comes from the unstoppable force of the fandom meeting the immovable object that is Mark Fishbach. Darkiplier, as a character, a concept, and a part of Mark's brand, literally refuses to die, and maybe that persistence alone will lead us somewhere new and unexpected once again. Okay, thanks for watching, happy Halloween!
From a marketing standpoint, the countdown, bar none, is the biggest hype-building thing you could ever do.
I don't know, saying I'll leak my nudes when this video drops. That's a pretty good hype builder, Tyler. I don't know if you
From a solid marketing, PR, non-lying standpoint, yes.
How do you know that we're
How do you
lying?
know? I don't think either of you would do that.
I have said it before, I'll say it again. I would not mind posting tasteful nudes of myself so long as they were well shot and well edited.